If you enjoy our videos and podcasts and would like us to continue putting out regular quality content, head over to patreon.com/aircrewinterview, where you can donate monthly, and in return you will get rewards ranging from early interview viewings, bonus clips, credited as a producer, and much more. Thank you and enjoy. How did the Pakistan Air Force acquire the F-16, and how did you get to fly it? So tell us your story on the F-16.
I was in Mirages at the time. This was 1985. We got them in 1983, the F-16s. Yes. And I went over from the Mirages to fly the F-16. The things that struck us, because we'd been flying, everyone in the Air Force had been flying conventional fighters, and conventional means everything that on the F-16 was unconventional. Starting with the seat, it's 30 degrees reclined. The stick movement was 1/16th of an inch in each axis. I mean, you move it forward, it goes 1/16th of an inch and 1/16th back. So when you do a loop, actually 1/16th is just a wee bit. And you sort of, it was more like a pressure transducer that senses pressure, and it would just go around and do a loop. That was stunning. That was amazing. And the fact that it was on the right side, we had actually elbow rest, like you have in the car door, to rest your arm. So you could just rest your arm over there. And the first time we flew, we thought this was the most natural thing. And we wondered why the stick was ever placed in the center. The conventional mechanical or hydromechanical controls, why wasn't it here? So it was very natural for us. And then the bubble canopy. On the Chinese fighters, you could just see the neck. From outside, you could just see the neck of the pilot, neck and above. Here, if you had the seat up, an outsider on the ground could actually see part of your leg also. If you had the thighs up, because your feet were also about 7 or 8 inches higher than normal. They weren't on the floor. The rudder paddles were actually higher. So combined with 30 degrees recline, and side stick, and a bubble canopy, and of course, an unstable aircraft. As you know, it was unstable. The center of gravity in all aircraft is ahead of the center of pressure. Here, it was behind. So that was quite something. And as we all know, controllable only with the help of computers, flight control computers. Otherwise, of course, it can't fly. And that was something, again, unique. 4 of them, 4 computers, so there's no question of failure. And if it did, you had this hydrogen gas-fired generator, which would kick up. Hydrogen gas is like TNT. It explodes, but it's a controlled explosion. They could use TNT also to fire up the generator, but it'll blow up. This gas is safe enough. It sort of comes in contact with the air, and it's a mini blast in a tight space, and it spins up the impellers of the generator. And it has, I think, enough gas to get you back within about 15 minutes, 10 or 15, 12 minutes of flight, and you can just rush back to a safe, close by runway. But never happened. We've had false failures, false firing up of the hydrogen without any problem with the flight control. That's a maintenance issue with the hydrogen container. Otherwise, no flight control. We've never had, not in the Pakistan Air Force, none that I know of in any other Air Force. The 4 flight controls, the 4 computers that failed, no such thing. The first, I was there in the squadron, the first crash that took place on the F-16, I wonder if you know about it. 2 of my course mates, they were flying in the dual-seater in the F-16, and there was a night mission, and as they rolled for takeoff, something hit the aircraft with a thud, and next, the aircraft was on fire, huge flames, and they both had to punch out. And we discovered that these were wild boar that had struck the aircraft nose wheel and sheared off the nose wheel. The nose went down. When the nose went down, the drop tanks also started to graze the runway, and they turned red hot in no time, and they blew up, and the pilot had to eject. First loss, and later we had to build a wall around the whole base. And earlier there had been some suggestions that let's build a wall. We have wild dogs and occasionally wild boars on the runway, which would be dangerous. And they said we don't have enough money. And when we lost the F-16, in 1 month, a wall, I think 11 kilometers length wall about 6, 7 feet high. All around the base was built within 1 month.
Yeah.
So hard way, learned a lesson the hard way in the F-16.
Yeah.
Now, comparing, like I told you, comparing the F-16 with conventional fighters, everything was different, just about everything.
Mm-hmm.
So not that we had to unlearn anything, but we had to sort of learn new things which had not been seen on any other fighter that way. And since we were amongst the early lot at that time, 85, 86, 87, these were the early years, not just in Pakistan Air Force. In fact, the American Air Force got them in, I think, 79 and 80. In fact, their squadrons were also still equipping with the F-16s like we were. So it was very modern for its time. Extremely safe aircraft, other than, these silly accidents. The few that we've had were mostly pilot factors, one or two, one disorientation, one bird hit, things like that, but nothing to do with the aircraft.
Yeah.
Extremely reliable system, the engine itself. So no issues in that. In fact, design-wise, I think it's one of the best designed aircraft in the world. I'd say that if I'd flown the Mirage 2000 or if I'd flown the F-18, these are modern. Of course, they're all viceless, very good aircraft, but then you start to have some kind of attachment with the fighter that you've flown. So I, of course, love it. And I got a chance to fly last year. Last I flew was in 1989, 30 years ago, exactly 30 years ago. And one day, the chief of staff, he called me directly. He was one of my students at the academy. And he said, "Sir, would you like to fly?" I thought he was, he wanted me for some conference at the air headquarters and he was sending a special aircraft for me. I said, "Yeah, okay. When, where?" He says, "Get your G suit and helmet ready. You're flying F-16. I said, "Okay." F-16 after 30 years was quite something. But this aircraft that I flew was the midlife upgrade F-16. The ones that we've flown were just basic F-16 A's and B's, and the upgrades are taking place in, I think, 2011-12 timeframe. So here, the capabilities were, I really can't sort of explain it because I haven't read much about it. We had the sniper pod, we had the BVR capability, everything was data linked, new cockpit, new instruments, and so on. So the capabilities immensely increased. I recall that the buttons on the stick and throttle, each button had one or two functions, adding up to about 6 or 7 functions on the stick and 6 or 7 functions on the throttle. Now there's something like 20 odd on the throttle and 20 odd on the stick. And at the end of the mission, I thought it was more like a video game. You had to be savvy in a video game, and the psychomotor skills now are the prime thing. Especially with the BVR capability and with the data link where you can be linked up. I mean, an AWACS aircraft can pass its information down to you, downlink to you through data link. You can uplink your info, your radar info, or whatever info of one of the sensors to the radar flying up or the ground radar, or the ground radar can pass it on to you. And the most impressive, you can pass it on to your formation members.
Yeah.
You locked up your formation members, they have got the radars to stand by. So you can just lock up and pass it on as you do on your mobile phone to your number 2. So number 2 just gets a beep and he looks at the radar scope and says, somebody's locked up for me. And all he has to do is just get his bearings right and press the missile release button. So the capabilities are immense. So that's a major change. So by the skin, it's F-16, but from inside, everything is really changed. New radar, new sensors, all fused, centrally controlled by better, more powerful fire control computer. The capabilities of the same F-16 are immense, and as you must be knowing, the structural life was something like 8,000 hours initially. And after the midlife upgrade, it's 16,000 hours.
So double, yeah.
16,000 hours take, I think, till the end of this century to complete.
Yeah.
We've had Mirages flying for 60 years, 53 years now, with a life of 5,000 hours only. So if it was 16,000 hours, I think we'd be stepping into the next century.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So it's going to be around for some time.
Yeah. And was it nice having that extra power, especially in reheat, coming from the Mirage?
Yeah, of course, yes. 9 Gs was something, and 9 Gs could be sustained by PAL, and it had immense power, thrust to weight 1:1. And as we gained some experience, the hot thing was to do a very steep takeoff, a rocket takeoff, we used to call it, which was not possible in other aircraft. And in turns in combat, at virtually all altitudes, you could sustain your speed, which wasn't possible in conventional fighters, except at very low level, perhaps, yes, but not higher altitudes. The F-16 could do that. Sustaining speed was no problem. Sustaining 9 Gs, of course, the limit was the pilot, not the aircraft. Able to sustain 9 Gs. Although later fighters, of course, after the F-16, there were many others which have the capability of 9 Gs now. But in the 80 or something, to be able to pull that.
It's still an impressive aircraft to this day. I mean, it's still, I think there's a lot of nations still ordering to this day, the advance. I think, is it maybe the Saudis, are they ordering F-16, the next ones, or Oman or something? Or they're ordering like really advanced F-16s?
Oman has them, and UAE has them.
UAE, yeah.
Were it for not for the stealth capability which it lacks, it would have been stealth fighter for many more years to come. But I think it's the end of the life for the F-16, at least in Western countries.
Yeah, the F-35 coming in, yeah. But how many hours did you get on the F-16, and how many years did you actually fly it?
I flew it for 3 years and about 500 hours or so.
On the quite F-16. A bit of time.
Quite a bit. The average is, for me, I said I'm a sort of a unique case just by chance, by sheer chance, average about 500 hours on fighters, each type of fighter. There are people in the Air Force who've flown just the Mirage 5 or the F-6. There are people, one of my course mates, he's got about 2,000 hours on the Mirage alone.
Wow. Yeah.
Mirage 5, yes. And there are people who've got a similar number of hours on the F-6. They were not able to jump on. Typically, what happens is that you jump on after about 500, 600, 700 hours, move on to the next more modern fighter, and so on. But sometimes constraints of availability of instructors, they're not enough, so you just stay on because you have more experience. They want you to stay on in an operations emerging unit as an instructor and so on. So I was just a lucky one who happened to fly these number of fighters, the Chinese and the French and the Qatari, the French, of course, in Qatar, and
yeah, I think I would prefer to fly more types and get less hours to just have that experience. Yeah,
and then after the F-16, what happened? Then I went to Qatar, and then came back and commanded Mirage Squadron. My own squadron, the one that I flew in earlier, I got to command that, the Maritime Attack Squadron. And from there, I moved, I'm talking about the flying part.
Yeah.
Did a couple of test jobs and then moved as the OC of the wing, of the Tactical Fighter Wing, where on the base we had the Mirages and the F-7, the MiG-21.
Yes, because that's what I want to talk about now, because that is a very unique aircraft. It's one of my favorite aircraft, actually. So yeah, tell us your story, how you became involved with the F-7.
So I wanted to fly because I had enough experience on nothing new on the Mirage. I'd done all. So I wanted to fly the F-7. When I did my cockpit time in my ground school, didn't take, seniors just finish off in a couple of days, just need to know the checks and procedures. And I found it is a very simple aircraft to the extent that, senior officer, OC wing or a base commander, he's usually busy with his staff work, and from the desk he has to move to the aircraft and, get his bearings right and all his checks and procedures. And I thought the safest way, after a couple of sorties, the safest thing for me was just to make sure all switches are outboard. So you won't be missing anything. If nothing is required, no problem. Nothing will get damaged. So the checklist was very simple. The checks that you had to do on the ground were extremely, there were just very few. And since it was a tailed aircraft, a tailed delta, so none of those vices of the Mirages, losing speed in performance, very high speeds on takeoff and landing. Those weren't there. And secondly, it was very robust. Uh, very, by the looks of it, looks delicate, especially the F-13, the very first that we had. The RF-7 is actually the very first MiG-21 F-13, the first model with some modifications. And those modifications basically are that it had a fire control radar. We had our own Griffo fire control radar and a hardback weapon aiming computer and a head-up display, and a canopy which wasn't forward opening, which was rear opening.
Yeah.
And plus just relocation of switches here and there. So, but essentially it remained the basic F-13, the original. And like I said, it was somewhat in the category of the Mirage F1 insofar as the flying ability is concerned, the flying capability is concerned.
Okay.
Wide splits, no issues of, it was faster than that aircraft on takeoff and landing, but not as much as the Mirage, and didn't have any adverse slow speed characteristics. It won't go into, it won't just flick into a spin like the F-16 used to.
Right.
It was all control. And the nearly 100 hours that I have on the F-7, because as OC wing, I just stayed on for 1 year.
Right.
I didn't have any emergency, no problem, nothing to write home about. As far as getting into a situation is concerned, nothing of the sort. Really enjoyed my flying, and I used to call it the staff officer's aircraft because there were no worries. If you had to fly the Mirage as the OC wing or the base commander, which I was later on, you had to sort of open your book in the morning and read something about the checks and emergencies. For the F-7, you're quite sure that nothing would go wrong, and luckily it didn't.
So it's quite a robust aircraft, I heard from many people I've talked to about. Yeah.
Extremely robust, very simple, and for the capability, for the close combat capability, it had excellent. Of course, it wasn't a BAVR aircraft, but linked up with Lima, the 9L, a good dogfighter, pretty high on thrust-weight ratio, nearly about 0.9, which is actually good. Yeah, 0.88 actually, to be very precise. Low on fuel, yes, point defense interceptor, but if you're deploying it for the role, that is, just defense of a airbase or defense of a VP, a vulnerable point, does a job very well. And go up to the battlefield, not deep strikes, but just go up to the battlefield and deliver weapons like bombs. It could do very well.
Yeah.
So for the money, I think it was wonderful. Great value for money.
And I've always had I don't know why this is, and maybe you can tell me, but obviously Western aircraft, their cockpits are usually black, but in the Russians, they're always light blue. Was that the case with your F-7?
No. These were grey.
Oh, okay. Okay, because everyone I've seen, they're like really pale blue.
We went to Poland for a visit, and I recall this was a biomedical center, aeromedical center in Warsaw, where they briefed us in this question that you asked. We asked some of their doctors who were doing research on aeromedicine, that why do you have cockpits and some other stuff which is green, bluish green? And they said that's soothing for the eyes. That's what they said.
Okay.
That mentally a pilot tunes up to that environment quicker and he feels more comfortable. It's less stressful. I don't know how, but they said that it's less stressful. We've done a lot of research on that. And it works. But I haven't seen anything of that sort in Chinese aircraft, or certainly not the Western aircraft.
I always loved the afterburner plume on the MiG-21. It just looks great on takeoff.
Well, it looks great on every aircraft, every fighter. I mean, there's loads of thrust. It's a long plume. But perhaps because the size is small, the F-7 size is small, and the exhausters, the afterburner exhaust is rather long, as long as the aircraft itself. So it does look impressive.
Yeah,
especially
absolutely.
the concentric ring. Yeah, blue and red and yellow and all colors shading off. Another thing that I enjoyed on all fighters was to take them to the limits. And how I did that was after 200 hours, it's a regulation 200 hours on type when you're allowed to do the functional check flight or the air test. and I had 200 hours on virtually all types of fight, more than 200 hours on all types of fighters. And mostly when you take an aircraft up for an air test, what you do is you're supposed to, test the whole envelope. Even if it's an engine change or it's this or that, you have to theoretically. But then there's not enough fuel to stay up in the air for that long and check each and everything. So I thought if it's an engine change, do the engine checks and then let's get to the airframe thing and take it to the limits, speed limits, G limits. And for me, the speed limits used to be low level. If it was 700 knots, 750 knots, the Mirage was Mach 1.15.
Wow.
We used to fly over the sea, and I've done Mach 2.1 a number of times on the Mirage. It's a very good, despite being underpowered, aerodynamically for high speed, it's a perfect design. If only it had a more powerful engine, which of course came later as the Mirage 2000. But this was no problem taking it up to Mach 2, certainly in colder weather. In hotter months where the temperatures go up as high as about 45 degrees, it would take a while. But in winter months, no problem. And I did that in the F-16, Mach 2, and a little less than Mach 2 actually. I have to claim because otherwise they'd get after me. How dare you say that the Mirage F-16 can't do Mach 2? It does. And the F-7 I tried, it could, except for the fact that it doesn't have enough fuel. I went up to Mach 1.8, and now if I had started to turn back, I would have lost my speed. So there was no possibility of doing Mach 2, which eventually I did by going from one base to the other. Being in a ferry flight, I just had to go Mach 2, and I was clocking something like 1,200 knots, and the radar on the ground calls me and says, "Sir, repeated my call sign. Are you the same guy? Your IFF code, is that the same?" I said, "Yes, I'm squawking so-and-so mode and so-and-so code." And he says, "Sir, check your speed." I said, "Anything wrong?" And he comes up with a call. He says, "I think it's anomalous propagation. In winter months, you have anomalous propagation where the waves, because of cold weather, they just sort of bounce up and down like in the ionosphere, and they give false returns." So he said, "Maybe I'm getting wrong speed." I said, "How much are you getting?" He says, "Sir, 1,200 knots, but it can't be." I said, "It is." It is 1,200 knots. He said, "Sir, 1,200 knots, yes, never seen a blip going 1,200 knots. I said, "For once you can see that." And so from there, I landed at the base, which was about 130 miles, 140 miles from my home base, and landed on the other side. So I've done Mach 2 on all these fighters also.
Wow, that must have been a lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
But it sounds like you've had a great career, Kaiser. But we've got a question from some of our patrons, if you don't mind answering them for us.
Yeah, sure.
So this is from Alexander Vata Remik. Being somebody who was part of the Air Force, how are you able to keep an unbiased view on the military history of your country as shown in your books?
Well, you said we don't discuss political issues, but then, of course, how do you reckon the performance of Air Force, the capability of Air Force? By war, if you had the opportunity of going to war, you just look at the statistics, and determine what kind of Air Force you are. I won't get into all those details because they can kick up a storm. But the fact, for one thing, I think about 17 or 18 countries asked, the Middle East countries, mostly some in Africa, asked for Pakistan Air Force instructors. And that we've been doing since 1967, the Arab-Israeli War. We've had instructors in Algeria, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Zimbabwe, Egypt, Jordan, and a couple of countries I forget offhand. Quite obviously because they must have seen something good, some capabilities with the Pakistan Air Force, which, of course, that's one indicator. Second indicator of our performance, I would say that our safety record, by way of how many accidents per 10,000 hours or 100,000 hours, by whichever way you reckon, it's been excellent. The tactical air force, the American tactical air force, minus the transport, because when you bring in the transports, everything becomes so much more safer. But if you just look at the fighter record of the American Air Force, ours isn't too bad. We've had some years, 2 or 3 years, where we had 0 accidents for the whole year.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite an achievement. Otherwise, it's in decimals. And once upon a time, about 50, 60 years ago, it used to be something like 40 accidents per year, 40 major accidents per year. From there, we dropped down over the years to less than 1. And this year has been great. Last year was also pretty good. So that's a second indicator of the performance. And like I said, in wars we've done, considering that the adversary has been bigger in size, we stood up in 1965. The performance was sterling for whatever reason. There were leadership failures on the other side, I think, and our capability of pilots was excellent. I think trained in America, the others weren't, or they had Russian tactics and so on. We were following Western tactics. And then again in 1971, though we lost East Pakistan, that was a major loss. Of course, we can't we can't brag around that the Air Force did well. Overall, of course, it was a loss for us. The country seceded, it sort of broke up. But given the circumstances, the PF was able to, in fact, my book is about the 1971 war that I had published last year. That's being republished by Helion UK, the publishers. They're redoing the whole thing. The title of the book is In the Ring and On Its Feet. And that title I took from the official Indian history, where the Indian historian, at the conclusion of his 3-volume history of the 1971 war, says that at the end of the war, the Pakistan Air Force was in the ring and on its feet. So it was a sort of a tie. So, and of course, if you want me to touch on the 27th February thing, which has been very controversial, I know. I don't want to get into point scoring, but we were able to, given the circumstances, we were surprised, the other side struck us, and we were able to strike back within 30 hours. And in the bargain, we at least shot down 1 aircraft and perhaps damaged the other one, or something happened to the other 2 also. So that's not a small thing for an Air Force, which is resource constrained, which is smaller in size. I think we have been doing well. So that's my answer to that question the gentleman asked from.
So the second question from Alexander Vatta is, are you still flying? And if so, what type?
No, I'm not flying.
Not flying, no.
No, I'm not flying. I didn't want to fly commercial because I never had interest in commercial after retirement. I took up, in the morning you just asked me that you'd like to know what am I doing now after retirement. After retirement, I took up some hobbies. These are kiddish hobbies, but I love them. I enjoy them. These include expedition cycling. Every year I do 500 kilometers expedition, self-contained, with a tent on my wheels, with a bedroom on my wheels, so to speak, on a bicycle I'm talking about, not a motorbike. And kitchen on wheels, pharmacy on wheels, a workshop on wheels, my sleeping bag and tent, just the 2 of us. Wow. And each year we do a 500 kilometer expedition up in the northern areas, where we've gone up to 16,000 feet without oxygen on cycles, to the northernmost latitude of Pakistan, to Siachen Glacier, or whatever you've heard of it, and been doing a solo trip also to a faraway place in the northern areas. And the topping on the cake was 2015. Both of us, we did a 1,000 kilometer cycling trip from Gilgit in the northern Pakistan to China. Wow. Bhutan is a place in Xinjiang province. So that's been a huge challenge for us, and we do it every year. Next year, I'm planning from Chitral to the northern Afghanistan-Pakistan border, again on a cycle. Let's see if I can pull it off.
Wow, that's quite an achievement.
Then I qualified as a PADI scuba diver 2 years ago, and I'm waiting for my advanced course. I had a bit of a problem with my eardrum. I couldn't go as deep as they want us to in the advanced course, which is 100 feet. So now I'm okay. So perhaps I'll attempt that coming season. And now into writing. My first book was Great Air Battles of Pakistan Air Force, and the second one was about the 1971 war. And my third and fourth books will be about my adventures and travels on my bike in Pakistan and abroad. So that sort of keeps me busy, and that also keeps me away from the cockpit of a commercial liner. I just thoroughly enjoyed my fighter flying. So anybody willing to give me joyride in a fighter, I'm game for it. But no flying really.
You're like a real life action man.
Well, so far so good.
Yeah. And one last question from our patrons, Kaiser. This is from Joe Kunzler. How hard was it to learn to fly the F-16?
It wasn't hard at all. Just not hard. If you go by phases, the basic flying is very, very simple. The flight control computer limits your departures from or departures into dangerous regimes. It just doesn't let the aircraft go into a stall or a spin. It's not possible unless you override the control and you want to purposely go for a spin like the test pilots do. Otherwise, you can't. So that makes things a lot more easy. And then the speeds are very, very slow. It's in fact, like I told you, it's nearly as slow as like the F1, as slow as the T-37. Very simple to take off and land. There's no drag chute. It just stops very easily. So from that point of view, it wasn't difficult. In our time, we didn't have a simulator for the radar. So we had to learn everything by going up in the air and learning the intercepts and all. Now they have simulators, so things are that much more easier. They would have been easier, except for the fact that after the midlife upgrade, the aircraft can do a lot more than what we could 30 years ago. So it's a much more capable aircraft, and capability goes with more proficiency required, and that requires more time. So people are spending more time in the squadrons, late backups, but it's just a job to be done. So from that point of view, the preparation for a mission, that is more time consuming, I'd say. But once you're well prepared, going up in the air and performing what you did, because you've already done enough simulator. So simulator makes things easier for you, but more time. You spend more time in the simulator and mission preparation. Unlike our days where you just hop onto aircraft with much lesser preparation. So all in all, it is a very easy aircraft to fly. Nothing dangerous about it. Nothing worrisome about it. Like there were times when you were worried about flying the F-6 against a flight commander who had 1,000 hours. You knew that he'd whip you up in the air because he had more experience. He could take an aircraft to zero speed, and you couldn't. And those were dangerous things. On the F-16, such things don't really matter. They're not. It's not a dangerous aircraft in any way.
Yeah. So just a few questions from myself to wrap up the interview, Kaiser. This could be a difficult one for yourself. What was the favorite aircraft you have flown?
Well, I'll be very frank. When we flew the F-16, it was a costly aircraft. It was very new technology. So there was over-supervision, which the youngsters never enjoyed. We could get away with similar mistakes on the Mirages or the F-6s, and it was just between the flight commander, the squadron commander, and it was an in-house affair. He just sort of rapped you on the knuckles, don't do it again kind of thing. Here on the F-16, a mistake would go right up to air headquarters. Somehow it got transmitted to air headquarters. Why did this happen? Why did the horn blow? At that altitude, why did you get to that altitude? And so on and so forth. So deep, and of course, I'm talking about the times when we had this Afghan thing going on. The Russians were intruding and we were flying missions against them. So they were closely monitored. So you weren't so comfortable because every now and then you'd be questioned. In a way, it was good because we were the sort of pioneers and we had to set the pace. And since we were being checked every now and then, so what we passed on to our juniors was, I'd say, something more professional, which we weren't doing, and we were having a sort of a, kick the tire, light the fire kind of thing on conventional aircraft. Here we couldn't do that. So in a way, it was good professionally, but purely from an enjoyment point of view, the kind of thing that you're saying, which squadron did you enjoy in? yes, the conventional fighters, because they were less demanding. They were less demanding in the sense that their capabilities, the things that you could do with them were limited. Here at F-16, you had a lot more to do, you had a lot more to learn. And of course, you were being supervised, your performance was under check constantly. So, that fun that we were used to wasn't there in a certain way, if you can understand what I'm trying to put across.
Yeah. And finally, where can we find your books online?
Now, they are available online. What is happening is the publisher here, he is not doing enough, and people just buy bulk. They buy 100 books and put them up. Actually, it costs less than about £5, but on the internet, on Amazon, you'll find it for £25, something like that.
Right, I see.
So that's not they're costly. But Helion is going to publish the same book next April. In fact, you heard of Tom Cooper? Tom Cooper? Yeah.
Yep.
He and me are now these days working on some colored aircraft profiles and maps for the book. It's a redo of the book. They're professionals in this field, and they have a cartographic section. I'm quite impressed with everything that's going on. So that should be out next year.
Brilliant. Well, we'll keep our viewers linked up with that once it comes out, and I'll keep in contact with you. But I just want to thank you very much for coming on the show and sharing a bit of your story. It's been brilliant to hear about your flying career. So thank you very much, Kaiser.
Thank you, Mike. Really enjoyed.